Welcome to the City Debate Show. Joining me around the table today, the Secretary of the City Supporters Club, Kevin Parker, and the one and only footballer, broadcaster, businessman, million-selling author, the one and only Fred Eyre. So, right, Fred, let me start. A draw away from home in Europe, a point at Anfield. Should we be skipping?
Yeah, good week. Obviously, I felt we could have done a little bit better at the end of the day in Copenhagen. But if you'd have said to me beforehand, will you accept a draw? I would have said yes. And I would have given the same reply if it had been offered a draw before the game at Anfield. So, yeah, you've got to be pleased.
Right, I'll come back to you on Copenhagen in a minute, but Kev, you were there freezing your tripe out, weren't you?
It was very, very cold. Yeah, played very well. I mean, with a bit of luck, we could have won both of those games, really, and that would have been fantastic, wouldn't it? But we'd have taken 2-2 before we went to Copenhagen. Puts us in the box seat, I think, for the replay this week. And, yeah, Anfield played very, very well again.
Right, that's the good news. Let's just take a little stroll back to the second goal we conceded in Copenhagen, Fred, because one of my mates in the pub suggested that might have been zonal marking, and I said, what, Twilight zonal mark? Because it wasn't great, was it?
No, the marking wasn't only slack, it was just non-existent, and especially at such a crucial point in the game, you're just more or less seeing the game out at that point, and when you concede a corner, you would expect... Well, you'd expect them to be virtually on the toes at any point in the game, but definitely when it's obviously a last final fling, all it wants doing is defending and heading away. You know, you'd expect the lads to be even more vigilant, but it was very, very slack, very sloppy.
Now, Kevin, it seems to have become fashion of the week to have a bit of a pop at Robinho at the moment, but my impression of him in Copenhagen, he did OK, but when he did get through one-on-one, whereas at the start of the season he'd have just gone on and you'd expect him to dispatch it, he didn't seem to have that level of confidence. Am I being a bit harsh on him?
No, I agree. I thought he played very well in Copenhagen, looked very mobile and was interested and keen. I mean, when he first came out, of course, was wearing those tights, you thought, not sure if he's going to be up for this, but he was. He looked lively. But I agree with you that he was never confident that when he went through on the goal that he was going to score that goal. So I think even though he played well in Copenhagen, and I thought he played very well yesterday, there is a little bit of confidence lacking there still, I think. I'm not sure whether he's got other things playing on his mind, of course, but I had people stood behind me at Anfield who thought he didn't play well yesterday, but I thought he did. So I think we can be a little bit harsh on him. Maybe our expectation levels are a little bit high based on some of the great performances he's given us at home. I think our expectation level away from home is a little bit too high, I think.
What was your assessment of Anfield then, Fred?
Yeah, I thought he was part of a good team performance. He didn't show any great flashes of individual skill, which, if we're being honest, that's why we paid all that money for him, and that's why he gets higher wages than everybody else. But I'm quite happy if, on games such as yesterday, he puts in a shift like every other member of the team, and I'm quite happy to judge him on games like that as a crucial member of the team. But when the opportunity presents itself for him to bring a bit of magic to the thing, you know, I really expect him to do it, and he is a bit down on confidence. As Kev said, the two breakaways one-on-one with the keeper earlier on in the season, you would just sit back and you just think that's a goal. But now he's not looked convincing. So I think the main part of his game, which is that bit of magic, that bit of sparkle, that bit of dust that he brings to it, that's missing at the moment. But I don't mind, as long as he plays his way through it, by being a decent component like the other 10 players.
Well, I think it was quite interesting. I heard someone talking about him yesterday and saying, yes, he is capable of a moment like that. But at the core of a team, Kev, what a manager really is thinking about is an Alan Oakes-type player who might not get your star rating every week, but always is going to give you 7 or 8 out of 10, something that you can rely on as your core of your team. Because Robinho, you don't know, it could be famine or feast, couldn't it?
Well, I mean, I think you'd be looking in different areas for that sort of core of the team. I think probably Kompany and De Jong would probably fit that sort of bill. I'm not looking... Alan Oakes was a fantastic player for City and, of course, played more games than anybody else, but I'm looking for a bit more from Robinho than Alan Oakes. I think I know the point you're making, but I think we'll get that from De Jong and Kompany. I mean, I agree with Fred. I thought yesterday nothing spectacular, but he was involved in the goal. created a great chance for Stephen Ireland. And in Copenhagen, you know, it was his persistence that created the first goal for Anua. So I think I would rather we get that team performance from him, that maybe we occasionally get the odd touch of brilliance as well, rather than him not doing a great deal and hoping we get a touch of brilliance.
Yesterday's game, did we get a real glimpse or a glimpse of the real De Jong, Fred? A bit of a growler performance?
We did as the game wore on, as it developed into something for us to hang on to. I really saw him step up a gear, because I now look at him and think, yeah, that's the type of battle that he likes, where there was something to hang on to, the goal, which came unexpectedly. And from that moment, you could see him grow another 10%, and there was a huge determination that, you know, we wouldn't concede, and that and he was involved in everything, everything defensively, that is. So yeah, I thought we saw a much better Nigel De Jong yesterday than we have seen. He's been okay, but at last half an hour at Anfield, he was really digging in and setting an example to everybody else.
Everybody needs a ratter, don't they,
well,
somewhere?
Absolutely. And he's more than that. I mean, you know, you think of ratters like little ones, but you know, he's a powerful beast.
Right, Kevin, let me ask you something that worries me a little bit. He hit the scene, exploded on the scene, playing for England in 2 minutes, Micah Richards. We've seen him at centre-back. We saw that woeful experiment at left-back. He wants to play at right-back. But shouldn't he have done more to stop that cross yesterday?
Yeah, well, we talked about him last time round, and I still don't think that that Micah Richards is performing as we would expect him to. And listen, he's only a very, very young player, and you do expect them to have dips in performance and perhaps dips in confidence as well. I still feel, as I thought last time, that his place in the team is probably going to be under pressure when the manager has to make a selection that perhaps he has to consider, as he will do, bringing Sean Wright-Phillips back in. I can't see him bringing Sean Wright-Phillips back into the team and playing Zabaleta and De Jong and company in midfield. I think Zabaleta's going to probably drift back into right-back, and then Richards won't be in the team. That's how I would pick it anyhow. I think Zabaleta will be very unlucky if he's dropped from the team to make way for Sean Wright-Phillips. It will be interesting to see how Micah Richards responds to being dropped, if he is dropped.
Fred, can we just nail this thing about Zabaleta? He's done all right in midfield. He's come in, a lot of enthusiasm, brought everything in terms of effort to it. But he is a full-back playing in midfield, so he is going to move back eventually, isn't he?
I would imagine so. I mean, you and I talked privately, and we did say after people were enthusing about his first performance in midfield, where he did well, don't get me wrong, but I did say that I'm sure that'll only last for 3 or 4 games. And, well, it hasn't worked out that way yet, because he's still performing in midfield, and yesterday on the left-hand side, which didn't do him any favours, to be fair. But to me, ever since I've seen him, he's a right-back, and that's the end of it as far as I'm concerned. It's nice to know that if there was an emergency thrown up, that he could go in there and short-term do a decent job. But as far as I'm concerned, and obviously with what Kevin's just saying, that's the general opinion, Zabaleta is a right full-back, and it won't do Micah Richards any harm to have somebody challenging for what has been his position virtually since the day he first broke into the team.
Right, let's talk tactics for a minute, because I was listening to you yesterday, Fred, and you read out the team, and I thought, well, I know what the back four is. And then you read out I thought, hang on, that's 3 holding midfielders.
Yeah.
And then I heard you come out with a great comment. It looks like Tom Finney and Stanley Matthews, the 2 wide men, are playing that wide.
Yeah.
And I thought, am I missing something here? There's a 40-yard hole in the middle of this.
Yeah, well, obviously it was so rigidly set out that it was perfectly obvious that those were the instructions from the manager, because we had the back 4, we had the 3 holding midfield players in front of them. That's fine. But the next 2, the 2 creative ones, weren't basically just anywhere in midfield. They were, on most occasions, you know, really, really wide. Robinho was right on the left touchline. Ireland was way out on the right touchline. And Bellamy was up front on his own. So it did leave that hole, but obviously the manager was confident that if they power through there, first of all, they've got to get through 3 hard men in midfield, and then they've got to get at the back 4. And at the end of the day, it worked for the manager, because we've come away from there with a creditable draw.
What did you think when you saw the lineup, Kev?
I thought that would be the lineup people would pick, actually, especially with Sean Wright-Phillips not being available. And it was also interesting to see, of course, De Jong and company playing together for the first time since he signed them. Of course, have experience from playing together when they were at Hamburg, and I think that's worked very well. It's not a formation you would want to pick at home, and I think the Zabaleta dropping back to right back to allow Sean Wright-Phillips coming in and one or two other options. But away from home, we've needed something a bit more sturdy there in the middle of the park, and I thought it worked fantastically well. Listen, we're all great tacticians as football fans, aren't we? And I've thought on more than one occasion this season that Mark Hughes has let himself down with the way that he set the team up away from home. I thought he got it bang on yesterday. Maybe it worked for him that Sean Wright-Phillips wasn't playing, because that was the only real team I think he could pick. But he got it right. And if we can, before yesterday's game, I wasn't confident we could pick up many points away from home for the rest of the season. Having seen them perform yesterday, I'm now confident that we can go to a few more places and pick up some points.
I think it's fair to say, Fred, to pick up on Kevin's point, you and I, 20 years in a press box, never had a bad game yet, have we?
No, I'm getting better as the weeks go by. Never played so well as I am at the moment.
This is Fred Eyre, that's Kevin Parker, this is the City Debate Show. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff in the second half. Apparently, Robinho and Craig Bellamy have been at odds. No surprise there then. See you in 2. City Debate Show. Joining me around the table today, Kevin Parker, who's the secretary of the official supporters club, and the one and only Fred Eyre. Fred, you know that when you are the richest club in the world, you're fair game for the media, right? Yeah. We all know that. But the press was full at the weekend about a little bit of a spat. And the protagonists, Robinho and Craig Bellamy. Who'd have thought that, Fred?
What a surprise. Yeah, well, arguments have been raging in dressing rooms all over the country for forever, and they always will. Nothing will change. So, but with the richest club in the world and the media spotlight is on you all the time, every little spat is magnified and reported upon. So I think there'll be another one next week and the week after that. You've just got to get used to it.
Is it necessarily a bad thing to have a player at one another's, not at throats, but, at odds?
I would say that it isn't a good thing, but it's just, it's just what happens. And, Craig Bellamy, he'll say so himself that he's sorted a few dressing rooms out on his travels, and it's, if something upsets him with his teammates, he's quite prepared to stand up and say it. Better that than sulking about and whispering in corners. At least with when Craig Bellamy's involved, everything's out in the open, hopefully then sorted out and move on from there. So I don't blame Craig Bellamy at all.
The other story that got a fair bit of airtime, Mark Hughes apparently likes to run a very tight ship, Kevin, and there was any number of pictures of Robinho wearing a club blazer but with an open neck shirt and a daft hat with ear flaps on and stuff. So do you give that much credence?
Well, I think those stories only have any merit to them or only have any credence when the team aren't playing well, and even
winning's
fans
the ultimate defence,
if you're winning, it doesn't matter what you wear or how you turn up for training. If you're losing, the fans and the media tend to pick up on the slightest thing, don't they? It's a little bit like Bellamy and Robinho apparently at each other's throats. I'd love to hear the conversations between them in Portuguese and Welsh. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? But I think Fred's right. If you go back to the mid-70s, Mike Doyle and Rodney Marsh, they didn't get on, did they? So it's always happened in football. Apparently, Teddy Sheringham and Andy Cole never spoke a word to each other for 3 years, and they played alongside each other in the same team. But the press do have a knack at the moment, and it was good to see the manager yesterday actually start defending the football club in having to go back at the press and some of the stories that are being published. I think we're fed up with them as City fans, and the sooner they stop for us, the better. But, again, to be fair, they're more likely to stop if the team are winning games. As long as the team are not winning games and losing games, it's the opportunity that the press are looking for to create this stories about discontent.
But it's the wealth, isn't it, Fred? The world changes. We were everybody's second favourite club because we weren't a threat. Now, if we get it right, we could challenge the great and the good of world football. Yeah. And someone's mixing up the status quo. And people are going to take every opportunity to put you in a negative light.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about that. It seems to go with the territory. we're quite happy to receive all this money from the Far East, and anything that comes along with it, we just have to learn to cope with it.
Right, let's have this is really being my bonnet, this, Kevin. What has Michel Platini got against English football?
Well,
because we're one down from Adolf Hitler at the moment, Manchester City, aren't we?
Well, again, it's another one. Platini all of a sudden has started complaining about the money in English football when it's Manchester City who were trying to spend it. You know, we didn't hear this criticism when, in the summer, Chelsea tried to sign Kaka for £80 million, reportedly. There was no talk then of Chelsea ruining football and that he's trying to do this with the UEFA rules. I mean, let him try, I don't suppose there's any love lost between the French and the English anyhow, and Platini's not going to help that situation. But I've stopped reading those sort of stories, I mean, he's trying to create a bit of a name for himself. He's only in charge of UEFA. The reality is that, the major job in world football is FIFA. Maybe he's pushing for that job, but it'll take more than a lot of hot air in the press, to get that position.
Are you quite sanguine about it, Fred, or does it get your goat this...
No, not as much as it gets yours, Jim.
Oh, it's got my goat, Fred. My goat has been got.
I can see that. But, no, I think he's just seems as though he's just trying to make his mark. And, obviously, the Premiership's now the greatest league in the world. So that's where he's aiming all his barbs and all his arrows. So, and we're an easy target at the moment, Manchester City. So I won't say he should mind his own business because football in general has become his business, but I don't see much credence behind it at all.
Right, let's cast it forward now because it's an interesting season. The way the league table is at the moment, Kevin, everybody's apart from the top 2 or 3 clubs, everybody's looking up and everybody's looking down, and it's very deceptive of how the season could pan out for anybody who's on and about the 30-point mark. So if you're Mark Hughes, what do you look for in the balance of the season now?
Well, I think he's fortunate that we've got a squad that's good enough that's going to win us the majority of our home games left. We're fortunate in that in the first half of the season at home, we have got out of the way the games of the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea. So it won't be easy playing the likes of, West Brom at home and Bolton at home. And Fulham at home, teams that are sort of you expect. But I'd rather be playing those in the run-in at home than the other teams. Away from home, I still think we might struggle to pick up a great number of points. And I was looking at the table yesterday. I'd still be, with where we are now, I'd still be reasonably happy to finish in the top 10. That's not what I expected at the start of the season, but I'd be reasonably happy with a top 10 finish. But, of course, we've still got the UEFA Cup to aim at, and I think that's going to be Mark Hughes' priority between now and the end of the season, as long as he can pick the points up at home that we need to secure our Premiership survival.
I know, because we've talked about this at great length, Fred, that because of the money and the timescale of expectation, you're not going to be given years and years to put a side together.
Not these days.
No, it doesn't happen anywhere, not just at City. But if you're Mark Hughes, you've got to be hoping now that the players that are recognisably your players are going to put a good stint in between now and the end of the season for a decent finish at the very least.
Well, it could be that 7th place gets you into Europe. So that's...
You could also get back in by winning the UEFA Cup, though, couldn't you?
Yeah, which we could be... our name could just be on that, Jim. But... if you were Mark, you'd be looking for at least that 7th spot, the way we're situated at the moment. So, I don't think that's unrealistic.
The trouble with that is, from my point of view, is that, like most people, I have this affinity with the kids. I still get a real thrill that we're sweeping all before us at junior football level. And now you've got 7 substitutes, you start to see 1 or 2 names on the bench. But until this Premier League position is resolved and you are safe, you're not going to see many of them get a chance, are you?
Well, it would appear not. There are managers that are a little bit more, shall we say, adventurous. I mean, there's players in Arsenal's first team who were in their youth team last year, which was the same competition that the City kids won. So you're talking of players of the same ilk, same level, and they're breaking in. There are players all over the country. Chelsea's got a couple in from the beaten team that Manchester City beat. So I think if you're adventurous enough and bite the bullet and think they're good enough, obviously, then I don't think it should preclude the manager from putting them in. I would have given Vladimir Weiss a little run at some point before now, but I'm not. You know, it's not my job that's on the line. But he wouldn't let the team down. He wouldn't suddenly turn a winning situation into a defeat if he threw Vladimir Weiss on, 20 minutes from the end of a game. But as I say, it's easy to sit in the stand and say that.
It's interesting, though, Kev, because I suppose we're thinking, yes, let's see a few of the kids. And if you Mark Hughes saying, I'm going to be judged on the players that I've signed, so let's get these players bedded in and come up with a strong finish. The kids maybe for next year rather than this. Yeah,
I mean, we still had 3 of the old academy in the team yesterday, Anua, Richards and Ireland. And I think Weiss is the one that a lot of the fans would like to see given an opportunity. But, again, that's probably going to come at home if we can... You know, if he's on the bench for a home game and we can get a couple of goals in front, then I would imagine you might... I think the manager is trying to give him an opportunity because he has put him on the bench more often than not recently, and I think the manager perhaps is also waiting for that opportunity. But you're right, he's not going to put a younger player in the team at the expense of his job, and ultimately he'll be judged on his results, not on how many of the younger players he's given an opportunity between now and the end of the season. And to be fair to Mark Hughes, and as I said earlier, I'm disappointed with how the season has gone, but his signings have done particularly well. Of course, Bellamy scored, 3 or 4 goals already. We talked about De Jong and company. They've played very well. We've talked about Zabaleta. So his signings have done particularly well this season. So you have to a certain extent, be confident that he's got a better understanding of which players will do a job for him if he does bring them in.
Just as we come to the end of this, Fred, when Mike Summerby was sat in that very chair, I think most people think, certainly at home, if you're going to see the best of Craig Bellamy, you want to see him play off another forward. And the name that Mike Summerby put in the frame was Ched Evans.
Yeah. Well, he's been having little chances. He could have done with a goal. It would have done his confidence a power of good. And at the moment, I don't think the manager, or myself for that matter, and maybe the fans, can decide whether he's going to be able to make that step up permanently into the Premiership level. I've no doubts whatsoever that if he went to a Championship club, a top Championship club, he'd get 22 goals. And it just shows what the difference between Premiership and Championship is these days. But he's still getting little chances. He's getting 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Not enough. It's not like a continuous run, but he is actually getting on the field. Great header at Portsmouth. Brought a great save out of Davy James. If that had gone in, it could have changed, or it could maybe change Ched Evans' his whole life, really. But anyway, it didn't. It was a great save from the England keeper. But, I think if he could just, on one of his little sub-appearances, if he could actually score, it would do him a world of good.
Many, many thanks as ever to Fred Eyre, and many thanks, of course, to Kevin Parker. I'll see you same time next time. City Debate Show.